Psalm 37:4 makes to us a very sweet promise. If you delight yourself in the Lord, He will give you the desires of your heart. But what happens when you're doing that? You're seeking Him, praying to Him, following Him, trusting Him, even delighting in Him by faith. And those deep desires, those desires for good things in this life, go unmet. That's where we find ourselves often. That's where creation finds itself always groaning in this unfulfilled desire that we read about in Romans 8:22. So how do we live by faith when we have to live with life's disappointments as well? That's where we're headed today in this email from an anonymous woman. Pastor John, thank you for the ways you've encouraged my heart over the years. I rediscovered your ministry 5 years ago, but my journey with suffering began long before that. 20 years ago, I was in a severe car wreck that left me in a 4-month non-drug-induced coma. I spent the next decade in therapy, relearning how to walk, talk, and even swallow. 3 times a week across 3 states for 10 years. Now at 52, I walk with a cane but look normal. No visible scars except for a trach scar. For years, I believed I was being refined for someone, that this suffering would lead to a godly marriage, but I've never even been kissed. I've prayed for years to be seen as a woman, not just my mother's daughter, yet it feels like God has not answered. Does this mean I've been refined only for Him? How do I trust, ask, and it will be given to you when my deepest longing remains unmet? Am I misunderstanding God's promises? My faith is wavering, and I don't know how to keep believing.
I think it will be helpful to say that this woman's experience is a deep intensification of a very common experience. What makes it such a deep intensification is the accident, the coma, the 10 years of rebuilding a whole life, the arrival of some sense of normalcy now in her 50s. And what makes it so very common is that millions of younger and older women are finding a way for themselves in life as unmarried persons when they have a deep longing for a good man to find them attractive and to want to build a life together. She asks, does this mean I've been refined only for God? How do I trust the promise, ask and it will be given, when my deepest longing remains unmet? Am I misunderstanding God's promises? My faith is wavering. I don't know how to keep believing. Now, I have in my mind women in our church who have been heroes of mine over the years, past 40 years or so that I've known women like this. I think of 2, for example, Char Ransom and Ruth Ravenhorst, both of whom are in heaven now and were single all their lives into their 70s and 80s. So I knew them for the last 30 plus years of their lives and were known in our church as 2 of the most sacrificial, loving, giving, happy, fruitful servants of Christ. One a public school teacher, the other a nurse midwife. Their lifelong singleness was not because they did not desire to be married. Char used to joke, no man deserves to be as happy as I could make him. Everybody laughed, and they knew there was way more to it than that. We all know the promises that make us ache. Ask and you shall receive. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He'll give you the desires of your heart. No good thing does He withhold from those who walk uprightly. There's not one Christian man or woman, single or married, who does not have a deep desire that God has not yet fulfilled. Some health issue, some marital pain, some unbelieving child, some unfulfilled dream. Everybody has one of these, or 10. And this does not mean that our experience contradicts the Bible, because The Bible itself portrays Paul, for example, with the thorn in the flesh as he pleads 3 times with Christ that he would take it away. And Christ says no, because his glory is going to be magnified through it. And so Paul is content, that's his word, he's content with his unfulfilled desire because he loves the glory of Christ more than he loves the absence of the thorn. And so paradoxically, there's a sense in which he got what he most wanted, a life that magnifies the worth of Jesus. That's really worth thinking about a long time. I think that's the answer to most of what we call unfulfilled promises or unanswered prayers. Christ is saying, if you will trust me, you will experience my no or my not yet as a deeper soul satisfaction than if I had said yes to your way and your timing. Now, at this point, I could pull out, I suppose, from the Bible and from church history, lots of beautiful examples of fruitful single women, Isaiah 56 and 1 Corinthians 7 and Amy Carmichael and Mary Slessor and Gladys Aylward and Lottie Moon and Betsy Stockton. But instead, I think it will be more helpful to ponder for just a moment what it's like to actually live with unfulfilled desires, because that's where we all live, some more painfully than others. There are millions of unmarried women, younger and older, who deep down feel, I would love for a good and worthy man to find me attractive and get to know me and say to me, I would like to build a life with you till death do us part. So how then do we live year after year, prayer after prayer, while those kinds of desires are not met? First, I would say that we all must learn to cast our burden on the Lord every day, not just once, and let him carry the weight of our unfulfilled desires. He said, cast your burden on the Lord and he will sustain you. Psalm 55:22. Unfulfilled desires are a burden. They are a heavy burden. If we try to carry them alone, they will crush us. That's the point of that text. Don't do that. Roll it on to the Lord. That's an act of faith every morning. So every day we must get up in the morning and say to God, you know, Father, how my heart aches for this. You fill in the blank. We're talking about marriage, but you fill in the blank. My heart aches for this. I do not see it on the horizon, but you are good. You are wise. You love me. You sent Christ to die for me. You do not withhold from me what is best for me. I roll the burden of this desire onto you again this morning. Now help me. Show me how to walk in freedom. That's first. The second thing I would say is that we must get rid of the idea that we need to communicate the sadness of our longing to others so that people will realize our pain. That's a terrible temptation. It is so immature. I have tasted this immaturity in my life right into adulthood. I intensely repudiate it, and I plead with you to do the same. Don't fall into the immature pattern of believing that pouting is the best way to let people know you have not gotten what you want. That's a deeply immature and counterproductive way to live, to carry your sorrows on your sleeve and to try to somehow communicate to others how hard life is because you have not gotten what you so deeply long for. Instead, discover this. It is possible for a mature woman or man to acknowledge to God and to oneself, and perhaps to a few close confidants, the deep longings that are not yet fulfilled, and yet carry on a joyful life, finding a fulfilling job, satisfying ministry, rewarding friendships, delightful leisure, stupendous Christian hope of being with Christ forever, all the while tasting what it would be like for another godly desire to be met, which isn't being met. That means there may be a melancholy note in the symphony of your life, but it will not be perceived as pouting or as, oh, poor me, please recognize my pain, by mature people. It will be perceived by discerning people that you have tasted sorrow and you have learned how to live with it without dragging other people down. So let's help each other. That's what we do in the church, right? Let's help each other in both directions. Let's help each other live with unfulfilled desires with God's help. And let's help each other meet those unfulfilled desires where we can with God's help.
Thank you, Pastor John. It's realistic and hopeful. A lot of great Bible texts in this episode. The very same Bible texts that have come up on the podcast over the years whenever we look at disability or we look at chronic fatigue, anything that makes us feel like failures. You'll see the overlap in this episode and in those other themes in the APJ book on pages 365 to 394. I would commend that to you if you want a debrief of sort of where we've been on the podcast over the years, looking at these challenges, these life disappointments, and what God has to say in His Word to sustain us in them. Speaking of suffering, we could say that God allows suffering into our lives. That's true, but what if He's actually intentionally designing the suffering in our lives, not just permitting it? Well, that's also true. So why, John Piper, do you focus so much on God's sovereignty in bringing pain into our lives? It's a pushback question from a listener, and it's up next. I'm Tony Reinke. See you on Monday.